Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Michael. This is Michael Stay Wild, and today I'm breaking down just how much I spent for 30 days backpacking through Ecuador. Now, this trip was back in 2022, so obviously it is a little bit overdue and prices may have changed slightly, but I still think it could be incredibly helpful for you if you're deciding to go on a backpacking trip through Ecuador. I also do want to say right off the bat, I decided to go through the Galapagos Islands, so my prices are significantly higher than if you had decided not to go. Basically doubled. Many of the backpackers I met while traveling through Ecuador decided to skip it because they didn't want to spend that extra money, but for me, it was a bucket list item. I really wanted to go scuba diving in the Galapagos, so I decided to spend the money to make it happen. And honestly, it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, but I do understand why people would skip it. Another thing I just want to I preface all of my budget videos like this. This was my personal trip. Obviously, you could do it for much cheaper. You could do it for 10 times the cost. We're all different, but I do believe that if you're somebody who wants to stretch their dollar but still enjoy their trip, that this would be incredibly helpful for you. And another thing, all prices will be in Canadian dollars as I am Canadian. But if you're American or if you're European, I will put the USD and the Euro conversions in the description below so you can have a look at that if that's what you're looking for. All right, so the total cost overview, I spent $3,304.11, which works out to $109.87 per day. And like I said, because I decided to go to the Galapagos, it basically doubled the amount that I spent, and it was, I believe this was the most expensive country that I went through in South America. If I hadn't gone to the Galapagos, it probably would have been on par or even cheaper than the other countries. This total was broken down into 5 categories, which include food, accommodation, transportation, tours and activities, and extras. And now you will hear me mention the Galapagos several times. I may even make a separate video specifically on the cost of the Galapagos, of backpacking through the Galapagos Islands. But because it was a big portion of my trip, it was a big highlight, I'm going to mention it a couple times, so I apologize in advance. Okay, so let's get into it. The first category was food. Who doesn't love food, you know? $686.93 is what I spent in total, which works out to $23 per day. This includes snacks, groceries, eating out. I do a little bit of everything. In certain hostels, if they've got a kitchen, I love to cook my own food, but I also really like to try local restaurants and local food. And sometimes I am just craving a burger and fries, so I am gonna go get a burger and fries. That's the way I travel. That's the way I like it. Now, in certain places, it is incredibly cheap and affordable, relatively cheap and affordable, depending on the context. But if you're in Quito, like you can get meals for $1, $2, $3. Or when you're in the Galapagos, it's like 20 bucks, 15, 20, $30. So there is a big discrepancy between where you go, and that's how it adds up so quickly if you decide to go to the Galapagos. Let's go into number 2, accommodation. Worked out for a total of $391.36 or $13.05 per day. I stay mostly in hostels when I travel. I find it's the best way to meet people. It's the best way to save some money. They always have things going on, tours and activities, that sort of stuff. But I did stay in some private rooms because when I got to the islands, I just didn't plan ahead enough, and basically any hostels around were already fully booked, so I stayed in private rooms. They were really nice. They weren't actually that expensive. But it is something to keep in mind if you're deciding to go somewhere touristy. Obviously, look ahead that you can get your accommodation ahead of time. Okay, let's go into number 3. We've got transportation, which ended up being $849.24 or $28.31 per day. Obviously, this is far more than I would regularly spend on transportation. I like to take local trains and buses and whatever, but here I had to get the flights to get to the islands. So that was probably about 80% of this category was just the flights to and from the Galapagos. Otherwise, everything was pretty cheap. And I believe people mentioned to me that the flights do change depending on when you can buy them, but anytime that I looked, it was pretty consistent. So I mean, maybe look into that a little bit ahead of time if you can get cheaper flights, depending if you book them far in advance. I didn't book them super far in advance because I didn't know when I was going to be going. And I was sick when I first got to Ecuador, so my plans kind of got all jumbled around. But yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Number four, we've got tours and activities. This came out to $964.33 or $32.14 per day. A big chunk here is because I tried to make the most of my time while I was in the Galapagos. I went scuba diving multiple times. I went snorkeling. Um, and yeah, I mean, the tours just, they cost quite a bit to go scuba diving. I don't remember specifically off the top of my head, but I remember one tour being like $130 for a 1 day tour. So, I mean, if you're going there and you want to do these tours, they are pretty expensive because it's such a touristy location. But the scuba diving was, I mean, it was incredible. Uh, I scuba dived with hammerhead sharks. The uh, the dive master I was with, he was playing fetch with a sea lion underneath the water, like underwater. He had a dead fish and he was throwing it, and the sea lion would grab it and come back, and he was just literally just playing fetch with a sea lion underwater. It was one of the most incredible things I've seen. Um, did the Isabella Island tour. There were other things on the mainland that I did, like I visited the Cotopaxi glaciers. I hiked up the glaciers. I did the 3 day, I believe it was 3 days, Kilauea Loop hike. That was incredible. Not super expensive to do those mainland hikes, but um, very well worth it. And obviously, they do cost money because you're spending for accommodation and travel to and from. And there's still a lot of things that I didn't get to do while I was in Ecuador, but I'm incredibly happy with what I did get to do. So I highly recommend doing some of the tours and activities. I've met a lot of people when they travel, they don't really do anything. They just do what they can do for free. And I understand that you're trying to stretch your money as far as possible, but at the same time, I can only speak for myself. I prefer to enjoy my time and make sort of memories, and I make my memories typically come from those sort of activities and adventures rather than just walking down the street in the city. I like to do that, but I also like to have an adventure, you know? Um, but hey, to each their own. And okay, so let's get into the last one. This is extras and it works out to $412.25 or $13.74 per day. Now, this was when I actually did the budget breakdown. This was about three different categories, I believe, but I lumped it in together. So it includes laundry, clothes, toiletries, gifts for my family, and even an emergency room expense because, like I said, I was sick. When I came over from Colombia, I had already gotten sick. I visited the ER in Colombia, got into Ecuador, and it just got worse. And I visited the ER again, and it turns out that in Colombia, they gave me the wrong medication, and it was a whole kerfuffle. So I actually had, I think it was like $80 I had to spend to go to the emergency room in Ecuador. Um, but yeah, that was a lot of fun, but that was included in there as well. So I hope you don't have to deal with that, but it is one of those things while you're traveling, things just come up, you know? You can't plan for everything. Um, And yeah, I mean, I know I've already talked about this and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I know a lot of people skip the Galapagos simply because it's so expensive. But if you can afford it, I would highly suggest it. If you got to, if even if you, I won't say cut your trip short. If you're doing like a long South America trip, do what you feel, do what you want. All I can say is that it was one of the best places I've ever been. Seeing the swimming iguanas, the blue-footed boobies, walking down the path with 100-year-old tortoises that are just like, they're huge, they're massive. It's like that that alone, those little experiences were some of the absolute best things I did in Ecuador. It was the Galapagos, and then it was the Quilatoa Loop hike that I made some incredible friends on with. Uh, Met some incredible friends, then we hiked that. And then the glacier Cotopaxi was pretty incredible as well. Um, Also, this is just something that happened to me while I was in Ecuador. I didn't include it in my budget, but my bag did get robbed while on a bus between Banos and Guayaquil. Um, it was 100% my mistake. It cost me a lot of money. I lost my laptop, I lost my drone, um, all my electronics. It was a very large lapse in judgment, and I'm still very pissed off about it. But it's one of those things like you can't get too comfortable in your surroundings. So I just want to give a warning if you're deciding to go to Ecuador or any country for that matter. You can get People will steal from you in any country that you go to. But keep your eyes on your bag. Lock your bag if you can. For some reason, at this point, I got so comfortable. I thought I've been traveling for years. I've got no issue. Nobody's gonna rob me. It was bullshit. It was a mistake that I made. I took my eyes off my bag for too long. For some reason, I didn't have my lock on the compartment that had my laptop and my drone. Usually I do. That morning, I decided, I guess, or I missed it. I don't know what happened, but they got in, they took everything. Luckily, they left my passport, but I gotta say, I felt incredibly stupid when I arrived at my destination and I picked up my bag and it was 20 pounds lighter or 15 pounds lighter. Um, yeah, so I didn't include that in the price, but obviously things like that can happen. And if something gets stolen, it's one of those variable costs that you just can't plan for. The same way that I had to go to the emergency room, something could be taken from you, um, and you're gonna have to pay for it eventually. So that's just a reminder. It doesn't really have anything to do with the budget breakdown because obviously I didn't include it, like I just said 4 times. Sorry, I'm just kind of rambling, but I wanted to include it. And just as a reminder to look after your bag, keep it locked up, and never get too comfortable in any of your surroundings because there are crappy people all over the world and they will steal from you no matter where you are, who you are, how nice you are. It does not matter. There are people who will take advantage of you. And this was 3 years ago, and I still get really mad when I think about it because I know it was my mistake. Um, so yeah, just be careful. Also, I felt Guayaquil was quite sketchy, so I wouldn't stay there. I wouldn't stay there longer than you have to. I only got flights in and out, and then I was gone. But I digress. So, for closing thoughts, about $3,300 for 30 days, including the Galapagos. If you skip them, I would say maybe about half the price for just mainland Ecuador. But if you can make it happen, go to the Galapagos. Please go to the Galapagos. It is so incredible. I understand it's incredibly touristy. I get that. And I get that a lot of us travelers are very much trying to avoid touristy places. But this is one of those places where there is no alternative to a place like the Galapagos. Like these other sort of temples and things like that that you see in Asia or across Latin America or wherever you are. Like you can find an alternative that isn't quite as touristy and a little bit lesser known. Whereas the Galapagos, in my opinion, or as far as I've found, you can't really find that. So if you can afford it and you really want to do it, do it. If you want to skip it, then you just kind of cut this budget in half. Um, I mentioned earlier that I may just make a video about Galapagos, and I think I might. So stay tuned for that. And overall, I hope this was helpful for you. If you're deciding to travel through Ecuador, I really hope that you do. It's an amazing country. For the most part, people are incredibly nice, incredibly kind. The food was good. Some of the most memorable experiences I've ever had in my life, especially from travel, and I highly recommend it. I hope you found this helpful. If you've got any questions, please leave them below. I'd love to answer them for you. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I hope to have some more budget videos coming out soon. And I know a lot of the videos I have released so far are budget videos, but I'm going to branch out and start doing other videos as well. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy your time in I was going to say in the Galapagos. So I'm already kind of coercing you to go to the Galapagos, but I'm just going to say it. Enjoy your time in Ecuador. Enjoy your time backpacking. Wherever you go, just enjoy your time. Enjoy your day. All right. Have a good one.